What's up, everyone? In this video, I just want to share with you some of my appreciation of all the different arts and skills out there. And this is something that's really important, and it's just so amazing because most people never really appreciate it to this level, oftentimes because they never understand it to the level that they can really appreciate it, or they don't really understand it or understand why it should be appreciated. For me, I have a lot of areas of interest, like music, like science, like physiology, physics. All these things, they get very, very interesting when you really explore them. And what this really helps you with is, one, finding your passion, but two, just really appreciating the world. It's such an incredibly amazing world, but it's very easy to get lost in yourself and just think it's very dull, boring, stupid, unfair world. And I've definitely been there too. But let me just give you a few examples. So let's take music, for instance. Music's an easy one for me. I think of music as something that nowadays, with the pop songs, it can get very simpleton. The melodies are very, you know, the chorus is very simple, and the chord progressions, they're all the same. In fact, a lot of the music is very simple these days. However, there's still a lot of sophistication going on today and back in the day, and it just blows my mind. I always respect someone who really can do something incredible. And when you talk about timeless music, that's so hard to do. I mean, to this day, there are millions upon millions of people who want to become the next star. So it's such a competitive atmosphere with so much competition and TV shows. And even if you make it, your song does not stay well known for more than a year. Even if you luck out and get so fortunate to hit that, number one spot. And so when I think of timeless music, there are people like Michael Jackson or Elvis who last decades. But then there are people who last hundreds of years. Hundreds upon hundreds. And the best example is Mozart. I mean, the best movie to illustrate this is one called Amadeus, but this man is incredible. It's also a bit of a tragic story because he never really mastered personal finance, and even though he made money, he spent more than he made and he died poor. Having said that, he was such a genius. When he composed, every single one of his songs was written before he actually started writing. It was already in his head. He never made one, correction to his music. It was already pre-made, as if he was simply just writing it out. On top of that, his music is very, I don't want to say the word complicated or sophisticated, but there's just something magical about how he understands how the notes and the key theory, the music theory behind the notes work, to a point where some of his songs are just so well known. Did you know that ABCD is the same exact melody as Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and that these two songs were written by Mozart? Can you believe that? And it's also the same melody for Happy Birthday. These universal songs written by Mozart. And it was very competitive when Mozart was alive too. And yet, despite that, all those musicians and composers that made songs before, after Mozart died or was born, to this day, you will not remember a single one of those songs, even if they were played to you. Yet, some of Mozart's songs, you just need to hear a couple notes, and almost everyone knows what it is, even people who don't know music. And that is something that's so timeless and so hard to do that it blows my mind. And I mean, I could sing a few for you right now. That, and I'm not talking happy, happy, happy birthday or twinkle, twinkle, little star. How about this one? Bum, 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 or da na 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 na, da na 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 na, da na 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 na. Well, anyhow, the point is, he's an incredible guy, and I think one thing about passion, which is also a funny word because I think passion's one thing, but interest is another, and you can definitely be dissuaded or pushed away when people tell you follow your passion, and sometimes it requires a different teacher or a different person just to introduce you to something in a new way that really interests you. Now, let's move away from music and just give you a few more examples of other fields. And perhaps it can really not only open your eyes to new interests, but also really show you how amazing the world is. I mean, let's just briefly talk about physics and time and space and the universe. I can go on for a long time about that, but if you really want further reading on this, Neil Tyson does a great job of showing how interesting this whole thing is. Now, I'm not really good at physics. In fact, I'm probably below average, and that's from experience in classes. But physics and time and space and the universe, it's just such an interesting thing. I just think the whole idea that the universe is infinite or that the universe has a finite ending, both of those two options just seem so foreign and impossible to me that it's kind of paradoxical and mind-blowing at the same time. How can we be living in something that's infinitely expanding and has no end? That's like something out of the movies. And then at the same time, how can there be something that has an end? That also seems like something simpleton and from the movies. So that blows my mind. And the fact that there's trillions of stars out there with trillions of galaxies and all sorts of ridiculous stuff. There's more stars and planets out there than people on this earth, than grains of sand on the beaches. That blows my mind. And it just, I am just so curious what's out there. And I mean, with that amount of space, there has to be some incredible stuff going on. And I have a feeling we're not alone. And there's probably some really cool people out there as well. And it's just really interesting seeing all the different things going on in the world and all the discoveries that we're making. Because when you really think about it, we are living in a world of fiction and magic. I mean, just the whole fact that it's nighttime for me, and yet I can, with a flick of a switch, create light. I mean, there's so many stuff that we can do now, like me recording this moment in time and space, and then sending it out to the world without having to travel there. It's magic. I mean, we can create fire like a magic sorcerer, but we do it in a more scientific, practical way with by using the laws of physics, and that's what stuff blows my mind. Okay, moving on from that, let's go into I would say chess, and then we'll touch on storytelling, and that will be it, and maybe some physiology. So let's briefly, very, very briefly, again, we can talk about this for hours, but let's briefly just touch on chess. Chess, incredible game, and recently I got into this, and I started watching some lectures from chess, and there's this grandmaster, and this man literally he literally spent a whole week mapping out a chess problem. Now, how do you create chess problems? Well, you just minimize the amount of pieces on the board, and by doing that, the options for movements are limited, and there's only a few choices you can make, but then those choices can expand to 100 to 500 different possibilities as the game moves out until checkmate happens. And so this chess master, grand chess master, his name's Maurice, he spent a week building out this problem, and he's like a chess master, but uh, he's not the number one ranked player in the world. So he did this whole thing, and then one day, uh, he he called up the former rank one player, told him the problem, like the starting uh, placements of the pieces, and within 10 seconds, this guy did the whole thing in his head and gave the answer. And that's just incredible to me. I always admire like skill and talent like that. And it's just incredible. Of course, I will never get to that level. Um, and I think it's important in this world, if you want to succeed in terms of money, you have to kind of stay in your lane of skill. But at the same time, I could definitely be interested in this. And so it's definitely something where your eyes just open up to the wonder of what people can do in this world. Next, I said storytelling. So, of course, storytelling, it can actually get pretty impressive on its own. There's some stuff that's just like so well woven together in terms of the story that's just like, boom, I can't believe the author thought of that and did this and did that, and it all wove together. And from the beginning, he had the whole story figured out and the plot twister and all this stuff. And there's probably better examples of this, but one that comes to mind, I recently saw this. It was a bunch of Academy Award winners who came together to recreate the composition for a Disney movie, Beauty and the Beast. And they said in that composition, that roundtable discussion, how this one lyric at one of the first songs in the movie just kind of foreshadowed and wove everything together. And that was when Belle sang, "Oh, isn't this amazing? This is my favorite part, because you'll see." And they were saying how a computer program would never have been able to come up with that, because that lyric on its own, it doesn't make any sense. It's illogical in a way, but she's saying that because it tells everything about the character of Belle. She loves reading fictional books. She's a bookworm, and also it also is a sort of double entendre, because that's also portraying what the story of Beauty and the Beast will be like. You'll see, because the prince in disguise will be revealed. So it kind of weaves together in that way. Now, do I think a computer program would have never possibly come up with that? I don't know. I think there is a certain level of logic going on there. You know, it would have to be a very sophisticated computer program. But it's still amazing to see what humans can come up with. And then physiology. Now, let's put humans aside. We're done with all this humans are great type of stuff. Humans are awesome. Yeah. But let's just finish off with physiology and biology and ecosystems. Now, this is also a very interesting field, and you know, if you take enough classes, you will meet a professor or teacher who's just so passionate about this, because they understand and marvel at how the world works. Now, there's a lot of different things that are probably more amazing, but the one that I'll give you as an example is the whole ecosystem between a ant, a specific type of ant, and the predator and the fungi system. And so basically how it works is that the fungi and the ant, they kind of have to work together. So if the ant does not eat the fungi and become delirious and go a bit crazy, then the whole thing would break down. So it's kind of like this weird philosophical argument of, is there really free will? Because the ant has to go crazy, do something contrary to its behavior, which is climb up on top of a blade of grass to the very top. And then that actually feeds into the rest of the ecosystem. And basically that ant ends up dying and feeding the fungi, and the process repeats. So it's a kind of like symbiotic thing where everyone helps each other, and then if one thing goes out of whack, then doesn't work. And it's also kind of like a philosophical thing, because it's like, uh, is is there really free will in that sense? Because this ant is kind of like not doing what he wants to do. And then you get into like humans, and like, is there really free will? Because I mean, we say we do this, we say we do that, but at the end of the day, aren't we doing all this stuff because of genetics? And you might think, oh, I eat a soda because I love burgers and soda. Well, maybe it's because your body loves sugar and all the carbohydrates that come with it. So it's your genetics that's telling you what to do. Oh, well, what about dating? What about choosing a wife? Well, that's really hardwired into you. Why do you think you like big boobs, or the shape of a woman in a hourglass figure, or this or that, or larger hips? That's all genetic, because those things create healthier offspring. So it kind of gets kind of weird there. And again, that field, like, people debate until the cows come home, and they haven't solved it for centuries. So no point getting into that. There's people much more experienced than me, but I kind of like it just because of how interesting the world is, and I don't dabble too deep in it. So you can kind of see how awesome the world can be. And I guess one final thing is, of course, business. Now, business is one of the areas I cover a lot on this YouTube channel anyways, but I just want to round it off with yet another business thing. Let's make it quick. Ray Kroc, founder of McDonald's, grew this into one of the world's most recognized brands in the world. Started with one single restaurant. Now, what I think is just almost like a magic moment is that when he was in the army, he bumped into this crazy kid who every Friday night would not go out with the rest of the army folk and would stay in his room and just draw. And he thought this kid was really bizarre and weird. And turned out that kid's name was Walt Disney. So it's just crazy how these two people, they crossed paths very briefly. And they never talked, never became friends. But it's just very interesting because Walt Disney, he grew this company into such a multi-billion-dollar storytelling, incredible machine. Obviously not just on his own, but after he died, there obviously more people came in and expanded his vision. But both of these are some of the most globally recognized brands in the world. And at the end of the day, they were humans. Like, no matter how glorious or amazing or sexy or perfect a guy or a girl seems, they were humans, and they did have mistakes. They all pooped. They all have vomited at some point. They've all done human mistakes. And I think it's very inspiring to see such magic. For such accomplishment, billions of dollars being made, impacting billions of lives, all starting from a vision and an idea from two people, Ray Kroc and Walt Disney. And they didn't know how far they could take it. And for them to take it so far, and for them to just meet briefly, that is just mind-blowing. That's just the amazing world that we live in. And of course, there's all sorts of disgusting, horrible stuff going on as well, and horrible people, but there's also a lot of amazing stuff. So keep that in mind as well. And I mean, there's more and more stories than that. Again, check out the book Grinding It Out by Ray Kroc. There's going to be a movie made about this as well. But check out the book too, because you'll find some very interesting things, like how he first invented some of the staples of the menu, like the filet of fish, or how he also bumped into the founder of the Marriott hotels, and how, both of them had no idea how big their organizations would get. So I just think it's also very amazing because you get to study some of the world's best people and really, see why they succeeded, or at least, decide or analyze why they succeeded and compare it to all the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of business startup founders who think they'll succeed, but then a year, 5 years later, they fail and go bankrupt. So I think it's very, very interesting, and it's such a magical world. Thanks for watching. Hopefully it inspired you.